Focus on yourself in silence, not on others. Have you ever wondered what might happen if you stopped trying to be heard by the world and started truly listening to yourself instead? What if the real transformation happens in silence? What if the strength you've been chasing isn't found in applause or approval, but quietly waiting beneath the noise you've been trying to outrun? Imagine building a life so deeply rooted in self-trust and inner clarity that no outside chaos could ever shake it. Let's begin the journey inward together. There is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, a power that doesn't beg for attention, approval, or applause. You won't find it in the noise of the world, or in the endless cycle of comparison, competition, and craving. You find it in silence. You find it in those rare moments when you stop watching others and finally turn inward. Because the truth is, no one can walk your path for you. No one can feel your heartbeat, carry your wounds, or hear the quiet whisper of your inner voice calling you home. And yet, most of us live as if our worth depends on how loudly the world claps for us. But what if you stepped away from that stage? What if just for a while you withdrew from the performance and returned to yourself, not as an act of selfishness, but as a sacred rebellion? What would you discover in the quiet? What parts of you have been waiting patiently beneath the noise? This isn't a call to isolation. It's an invitation to depth, to stop watching other people's lives and start living your own. Not louder, not faster, but more consciously. Because the most important work you'll ever do won't be seen. It won't be posted or praised. It will happen in silence, in private, in the way you choose to think, heal, grow, and rebuild day after day when no one's watching. Focus on yourself in silence. Not to escape the world, but to face it with a truth that doesn't shake in the wind. The Stoics knew this. The mystics knew this. And maybe deep down you've always known it too. That's where we begin. 1. Time and solitude. Have you ever sat alone in a quiet room and realized how loud your mind can be? We live in a world that moves fast. Notifications, noise, opinions, everywhere, all the time. But if you really want to know yourself, you have to step away from all of that. Not forever. Just long enough to hear the sound beneath the static. Long enough to face the silence that most people are running from. Because that silence, it's not empty. It's full of answers. Time is the one currency we can never earn back. We spend it carelessly scrolling, waiting, pleasing, reacting. But solitude is what turns time into meaning. It's the place where masks fall away, where you're not performing, not adjusting, not explaining. You're just there with yourself. And that can be terrifying because when you stop distracting yourself, you're left face to face with your doubts, your fears, your desires, your unhealed wounds. But that's also where the real transformation begins. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." The irony is, we often feel most alone, not in solitude but in crowds when we're surrounded by people who don't really see us. True solitude isn't about being without others. It's about finally being with yourself. And the Stoics knew this too. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. But how can you know who improves you if you don't know what you truly need? You find that out in solitude, in silence, when you stop chasing noise and start listening inward. If you're always surrounded by people, always consuming, always reacting, you never get the chance to know your own rhythm. You're always adjusting to someone else's pace. But stillness, real stillness, lets your soul catch up to your body. It lets you remember who you are beneath all the roles you play. So ask yourself, when was the last time you chose solitude? Not because you had to, but because you knew it would strengthen you not to escape others, but to rediscover your own voice. You don't need more time. You need more intention, more presence, more space to let your thoughts breathe and your heart speak. And that space, it doesn't come from waiting. It comes from choosing. Choosing to unplug, to step back, to be alone. Not as punishment, but as a gift. Because only in the quiet do we finally begin to hear what truly matters. 2. Exploring self-love. What does it mean to truly love yourself? Not in the surface-level sense of affirmations or spa days, but in the raw, honest way that makes you feel at home in your own skin. For many people, self-love is the final frontier. We give so easily to others time, energy, forgiveness, yet withhold it from ourselves as if we must earn it. But here's a truth we often forget. No one can offer you the love that you refuse to give yourself. Real self-love isn't loud. It doesn't need to be declared on social media or validated by likes. It's quiet, subtle, and sometimes uncomfortable. Because loving yourself means holding a mirror up to the parts you've ignored. It means choosing to be gentle with your failures instead of ruthless. It means saying, I matter even when the world isn't clapping for you. And that kind of love is a practice, not a moment. Marcus Aurelius once said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you constantly think you're not good enough, that thought becomes the lens through which you see everything. It shapes how you treat yourself, how you tolerate being treated, and what kind of love you believe you deserve. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself in silence, in stress, in solitude. So what are you telling yourself when no one's listening? Nature had a similar insight. He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. Even in our harshest self-judgment, there is a strange form of attachment, a way of clinging to a negative identity because it's familiar. But familiarity is not truth. And sometimes self-love means letting go of the stories you've told yourself for years that you're broken, that you're not enough, that love is something you have to chase or earn. It's not. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a river. Across the water is every dream you've buried, every version of you that felt free, alive, unafraid. And in your hands, you're holding stones, past regrets, old guilt, voices that told you you weren't worth it. You can't cross until you let them go, and you won't let them go until you believe you're worth the crossing. Self-love begins not in grand gestures but in small rebellions, waking up and not reaching for your phone, eating because your body deserves fuel, not because you're punishing it, speaking kindly to yourself after a mistake, forgiving yourself for being human. These are not weaknesses, these are signs of strength, quiet strength, the kind that doesn't scream but endures, the kind that doesn't chase but attracts. You see, when you start building a relationship with yourself, you stop depending on others to complete you. You become your own safe space, your own source of peace. And from that place, every connection you make, friendship, love, community, it flows from wholeness, not need. The truth is, no one else can give you what you refuse to give yourself. No amount of praise, love, or success will ever feel like enough if you're starving for your own acceptance. But once you become the kind of person you're proud to come home to, everything changes. Not because the world treats you differently, but because you see it through different eyes. So ask yourself, are you a place you'd want to return to? And if not, what's one thing you can do today to change that? 3. Be self-sufficient. What happens when you stop asking the world to complete you? It's one of the most powerful and unsettling questions you can face because so much of what we do is driven by a quiet hunger for validation. We post to be seen, we speak to be heard, we give hoping to be loved in return. But what if your worth wasn't tied to anyone's reaction? What if you didn't need to be seen to feel real? Self-sufficiency isn't isolation. It's not about becoming cold or distant or pretending you don't need anyone. It's about choosing connection instead of clinging to it. It's the shift from need to choice, from dependency to freedom. Because when you rely on others to make you feel whole, you hand over your power, and sooner or later that power gets used against you. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Think about that for a moment. If your mood depends on someone else's words, if your confidence rises and falls with external approval, if your peace shatters the moment someone leaves, are you truly free? Freedom begins when you stop outsourcing your self-worth. When you stop waiting for someone else to validate your existence. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing others to give you what you can give yourself. And, ironically, that's what makes your presence even more magnetic. People are drawn to those who aren't desperate for attention, who radiate calm, confidence, and clarity without demanding anything in return. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why terrifying? Because it means standing in front of the mirror without distortion, seeing the parts you've tried to hide, the flaws, the shame, the unfulfilled dreams, and yet choosing to accept them, To say, this is who I am. Not perfect, not finished, but enough. That's the foundation of self-sufficiency. Not perfection, but wholeness. Think about someone you admire, someone who moves through life with quiet strength. Chances are they don't constantly explain themselves. They don't beg for attention or bend to fit in. They've built a life that reflects their values, not other people's expectations. That's what self-sufficiency looks like. Not detachment, but deep-rooted clarity. And the beauty of it. When you become emotionally self-sufficient, your relationships improve, not weaken, because you're no longer demanding someone else fill your gaps. You're showing up whole and asking for nothing more than mutual respect and real connection. No manipulation, no games, just truth. So, here's a challenge for you. The next time you feel the urge to reach out just to feel seen, pause. Ask yourself, what am I hoping they'll give me? And then ask, can I give that to myself instead? Self-sufficiency is not the end of love. It's the beginning of a healthier, freer, more powerful kind of love. One that doesn't bind, but lifts. One that says, I choose you not because I need you, but because I already have me. 4. Care for yourself inside and out. How often do you treat your body like someone you love? It's a question that stops many in their tracks because we are taught to chase success, productivity, recognition, but rarely to pause and ask, what kind of home am I building inside my own skin? The Stoics knew that true power doesn't come from dominating others, but from mastering ourselves. And that mastery begins with care, not indulgence, but intentional respect for the body, for the mind, for the soul that bridges them. Seneca said, a sound mind and a sound body, not as a poetic phrase, but as a fundamental truth. Your mind can't think clearly if your body is in chaos. Your spirit can't feel free if your nervous system is always on edge. Yet we often treat the body as if it's just a vehicle, something to push, punish, or ignore until it breaks. But your body is not separate from your mind. It's the vessel through which your wisdom speaks, your intuition rises, and your discipline holds. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, there is more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. And maybe that's the secret we've forgotten. We look for answers in books, podcasts, philosophies, and all of those are important. But what if your body has already been whispering truths you've been too busy to hear? That ache in your chest when you betray yourself. The fatigue after another day spent people-pleasing. The tightness in your throat every time you silence your truth. Care isn't weakness. It's strength with roots. To nourish yourself is not vanity, it's alignment. Sleep isn't laziness, it's a foundation for clarity. Rest isn't escape, it's preparation. Choosing healthy food isn't punishment, it's reverence. Movement isn't a chore, it's a conversation with your vitality. When you care for your body, you build the endurance to face discomfort without collapsing. When you care for your mind, you sharpen the focus to choose response over reaction. But true care goes deeper than routines. It's not just what you eat or how you move. It's the way you speak to yourself in silence. Do your inner thoughts strengthen you or sabotage you? Would you speak to someone you love the way you speak to yourself in your lowest moments? If the answer is no, maybe it's time to change the tone. Not with fake positivity, but with honest compassion, with truth that uplifts, not shames. This is not about becoming obsessed with perfection. It's about realizing that your body and mind are not obstacles. They're allies, and how you treat them reflects the value you place on your existence. Not just when people are watching, especially when they're not. So, take a breath right now. Ask yourself, what part of me have I been neglecting? What would it look like to care for that part? Today, even in a small way, because your habits are not just actions, they're statements. Every choice you make says, this is how much I believe in my own future. Your body carries you through every challenge. Your mind guides you through every storm. Treat them like sacred tools, not after they break, but now while they still have the strength to carry you where you're meant to go. 5. Learn to manage your finances. What if peace had a price and it wasn't money but mastery? We don't often think of financial management as a spiritual act, but it is. Every time you make a financial decision, you're not just managing dollars. You're shaping your future, reinforcing your values, and either strengthening or weakening your sense of control. Money isn't just currency, it's energy. And when that energy is scattered, your life becomes reactive, unstable, and full of unnecessary stress. But when it's aligned with intention, it becomes a quiet form of power, one that buys you freedom, not just things. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And in a world where craving is celebrated, more shoes, more subscriptions, more distractions, choosing simplicity becomes an act of rebellion. Financial self-respect begins not when you have enough, but when you define what enough means to you, not what society tells you, not what others flaunt, but what you truly need to live with purpose and peace. Carl Jung offered another layer to this. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Apply that to finances and it becomes clear there is no universal formula for success. Some people thrive with minimalism. Others feel alive building empires. But whatever your path, the key is clarity. Financial peace doesn't come from comparison. It comes from knowing what truly matters to you and refusing to spend your life chasing what doesn't. Managing your money is not about greed. It's about autonomy. It's about saying, I don't want to be owned by stress, by debt, by things that don't serve me. It's about building a life that supports your growth, not one that looks good, but secretly depletes you. Think of it this way. Every dollar you spend is a vote for the kind of life you're choosing to build. Are you voting for short-term comfort or long-term freedom, for distraction or direction, for surface pleasures or soul-deep fulfillment? And you don't need a six-figure income to start practicing financial wisdom. You need awareness, discipline, the courage to look at your habits and ask, am I spending to escape or to invest in something meaningful? Maybe that means canceling something you never use. Maybe it means building an emergency fund, not just for safety, but for dignity. Maybe it's finally tracking where your money goes so it stops vanishing into silence. Financial health is emotional health. Because when money controls you, fear takes the wheel. But when you control your money, peace becomes possible. And with that peace comes space to breathe, to create, to make decisions without desperation. So take the time to sit with your finances, not as a burden, but as a mirror. What are they reflecting back to you? What do they say about how you value your time, your energy, your future? This isn't about becoming a millionaire. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need chaos to feel alive, who doesn't need excess to feel worthy, who builds stability not for vanity but for freedom, because that freedom is what gives you room to live by design, not by default. 6. Dignity in relationships. Why do we feel the need to prove our worth to others? It starts young. The subtle reward for being good, the fear of disappointing, the quiet pressure to be accepted. And as we grow, we learn to perform. We smile when we want to cry. We stay silent when we want to speak. We bend, shift, accommodate, all to maintain connection, to avoid rejection. But somewhere along the way, we forget that dignity is not a prize others hand us. It's a presence we carry. And once you start trading your dignity for approval, you begin to disappear from your own life. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, because growth often looks like rebellion to those who benefit from your silence. When you stop people-pleasing, it's not that you've become difficult, it's that you've started respecting yourself. And people who've grown comfortable with your compliance will call that selfishness. But it's not. It's truth finally taking up space. Think about how often we say yes when we mean no. How often we shrink to keep the peace, not realizing we're creating a war inside ourselves. Dignity means drawing a line and saying, I don't have to be cruel to be clear. I don't have to be loud to be strong, but I won't abandon myself to keep someone else comfortable. Nature said it best. Become who you are. And that's the hardest thing in relationships, not losing yourself in the process of loving someone else. Real connection doesn't demand your silence. It honors your voice. It doesn't ask you to change your essence, only your patterns. And when you stop performing, when you stop editing your truth to fit someone else's comfort, you don't lose love. You find out which love was real, Relationships rooted in performance are always fragile because they're not built on truth. They're built on roles, expectations, illusions. But when you show up as your whole self, even if it means being misunderstood, you invite real intimacy, the kind that doesn't flinch when you're vulnerable, the kind that doesn't punish your boundaries, the kind that says, I see you and I stay. But that begins with you, with the way you treat yourself when no one's watching. Do you defend your own worth in silence? Do you set boundaries with your own behavior, not just others? Do you know what you need, not from a place of longing, but from deep self-understanding? Because here's the truth. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to treat you. Not with lectures, but with presence, with consistency, with calm refusal to betray yourself, even when it would be easier to comply. So the next time you feel the need to prove your worth, pause. Ask, what part of me feels unseen right now? What truth am I afraid to express? And then remember, dignity isn't given. It's lived. And once you live it, you don't need to demand respect. You embody it. And that becomes undeniable. 7. Cultivate serenity. How do you stay calm when the world around you is burning? It's easy to feel grounded when everything is going your way. When the bills are paid, your relationships are smooth, and your plans unfold exactly as you imagined. But what about when life turns? When you lose what you thought you couldn't live without? When people disappoint you? Or when the noise outside grows louder than your own thoughts? That's when serenity isn't just a concept. It becomes a lifeline. Serenity isn't the absence of conflict. It's the refusal to let conflict control you. It's not passivity. It's presence. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not a motivational quote. That's a survival strategy. Because if you don't train your mind to find stillness in the storm, you'll spend your life at the mercy of every gust of wind. There's a quiet kind of discipline in serenity. The discipline of not reacting to every insult. The strength of holding your center while others lose theirs. The clarity to observe, breathe, reflect instead of letting every emotion become a command. And that kind of peace is earned not through avoidance but through practice, through choosing stillness again and again when chaos begs for your attention. Carl Jung once said, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness." It's not about avoiding pain, but about learning to hold it without letting it shatter your clarity. When you cultivate serenity, you stop fearing discomfort. You understand that pain may visit, but it doesn't own you. That anger may rise, but it doesn't have to speak through you. That fear may whisper, but it doesn't get the final word. Serenity doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb. It means becoming emotionally wise. It's recognizing the difference between what is urgent and what is important. It's slowing down your inner world so that your outer world doesn't dictate your every move. Think of it like this. Your mind is a lake. If it's constantly stirred by every external ripple, you'll never see through it. But when it's calm, when you learn to pause, to wait, to breathe, the water clears. You begin to see what's underneath, and with that clarity comes power. The power to act intentionally, not impulsively. To speak from groundedness, not reactivity. So how do you cultivate that kind of serenity? You start with the little things. 5 deep breaths when anger rises. A walk in silence instead of a scroll through chaos. Journaling your pain instead of projecting it. Choosing presence when your mind wants to run. And each time you choose calm, you strengthen it. It becomes less of a reaction and more of a nature. This is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about mastering your state. Because the one who can remain still in the fire is the one who walks through life unshaken. And maybe serenity isn't a destination. Maybe it's a decision you make every day, a posture, a practice, a quiet rebellion against the noise. 8. Act more. Speak less. What would your life look like if your actions spoke louder than your explanations? We live in a culture obsessed with words. We post our goals before we pursue them. We announce our healing before we've done the work. We explain ourselves, constantly trying to justify our boundaries, our silence, our choices, as if our value Depends on how well we narrate our existence. But there's something powerful about restraint, about moving in silence, about becoming so deeply committed to your path that you no longer need to convince anyone you're on it. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And in that one line lies an entire way of life. Because anyone can talk about discipline, patience, or virtue. Anyone can sound wise, but it's in the quiet moments, the ones one sees, where your philosophy either lives or dies. It's easy to sound strong. It's harder to be strong when life tests you without warning. And it will. We all know someone who talks endlessly about change yet stays exactly the same. And we've all been that person at some point, caught in the loop of planning, dreaming, talking without acting. Why? Because talk feels safe. It gives us the illusion of progress without the discomfort of transformation. But nothing meaningful happens until your choices catch up with your words. NZ wrote, "What does not come from the depths of your soul shall not rise to the heights of others." When your actions are aligned with your values, they don't need to be announced. They carry a resonance, a weight. People feel the difference, even if they don't fully understand it. There's a quiet magnetism in someone who just lives their truth without apology, without spectacle. So ask yourself, are your actions making noise or is it only your mouth? Do your habits reflect your highest values or just your best intentions? Because the gap between who you say you are and how you actually live, that's where suffering hides. That's where imposter syndrome breeds. That's where your self-rust begins to erode. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to prove, you start to become. You shift from performer to presence, from narrator to embodiment. And when that happens, everything changes. People feel it. You feel it. Not because you declared anything, but because you showed up differently, consistently, quietly, powerfully. This doesn't mean silence is always the answer, but it means your words should rise from action, not replace it. It means you lead with your life, not your language. Because the deepest respect from others and from yourself doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you do, especially when it's hard. So maybe today is the day you stop explaining and start executing. Not because you owe the world proof, but because you owe yourself progress. 9. Learn to say no. When was the last time you said no without guilt? It sounds simple, a 2-letter word. But for many it feels like confrontation, rejection, even betrayal. We say yes to invitations we dread. We agree to commitments we can't handle. We bend our boundaries to avoid discomfort. And each time we tell ourselves we're being kind, flexible, easy to love. But what we're really doing is disappearing. Saying no is not about pushing people away. It's about finally pulling yourself closer. It's one of the clearest, most courageous forms of self-respect. Because when you say no from a place of alignment, you're not just declining an invitation. You're affirming a value. You're declaring what you will and will not allow into your space, your time, your energy. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And that kind of bravery starts small. It starts when you stop over-explaining, when you stop turning every no into a negotiation, when you stop apologizing for needing time, space, solitude. The people who truly care for you don't require your self-betrayal to stay close. The ones who do are not your home. Carl Jung added another layer of truth. The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers. This reminds us that when someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, it's often not about you. It's about their unhealed parts, their fear of loss, their discomfort with limits. Your job is not to manage their wounds. It's to honor your own well-being. Boundaries are not walls. They're filters. They don't block connection. They protect it. Real relationships thrive when they're grounded in truth, not in silent resentment or stretched energy. And the more you say yes to things that drain you, the less room you have for what energizes you. Life isn't just about doing more. It's about doing what aligns with your deepest self. And here's the quiet tragedy. Many people never learn to say no until their health collapses, until their mind is burnt out, their soul is exhausted, their body is screaming for rest. But it doesn't have to reach that point. You don't have to fall apart to justify your need for boundaries. You can choose to honor them now calmly, clearly, consistently. It starts with noticing the places where yes has become automatic. The people who expect access to your time without respect. The patterns that keep you overextended and undernourished, and then interrupting the cycle. One no at a time. Each no you give with intention is a yes to something deeper. Your peace, your clarity, your purpose. It's a statement that your time matters, your presence matters, and most of all, your integrity matters. You don't owe the world an explanation for protecting your energy. You owe yourself a life that feels true. 10. Connect with nature. When was the last time you stood still and let the world move around you? Not on a walk while checking your phone. Not during a hike just to burn calories. But truly still no destination, no agenda, just you and the earth beneath your feet. In those rare moments, something ancient awakens. Something beneath the stress, beneath the roles you play, beneath even your thoughts. It's the part of you that remembers you are not separate from nature. You are part of it. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them." That's not metaphor, it's instruction. Look up, look around, realize that while you're lost in thought, in deadlines, in the noise of modern life, the sky hasn't moved. The wind hasn't rushed. The trees haven't asked for permission to grow. Nature doesn't compete. It doesn't rush. And it never forgets its rhythm. And yet we do. We disconnect. We live in boxes staring at screens feeding on noise. And then we wonder why we feel anxious, out of place, or spiritually starved. But the remedy has been here the whole time. Outside your window, beneath your feet, above your head. Nature wrote, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking because movement in nature quiets the mind. It softens the ego. It reminds you that you're not the center of the universe. And somehow that humility is freeing. It lifts the pressure. It widens your perspective. You realize that the problems you obsess over are just ripples on the surface of something much deeper. Nature doesn't need your productivity. It doesn't ask you to be more, do more, prove more. It simply invites you to return, to remember, to breathe." So what does it mean to truly connect with nature? It means leaving your headphones at home and listening to the birds, the rustling leaves, the silence between sounds. It means putting your hands in the dirt, touching bark, feeling the cold water of a stream. It means watching the sunset without needing to capture it. It means being present, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Because nature doesn't just surround you, it recalibrates you, and you don't have to live in the mountains to feel it. A city park, a morning breeze, even 5 minutes under a tree. These are portals, opportunities to reset. Not because nature is magical, but because it is honest. It never pretends. It never rushes. It never lies. When you walk in nature, you remember a pace the soul understands, a silence that isn't empty, but full of wisdom. And in that stillness you find something rare, a sense of belonging that doesn't come from people, but from presence itself. So go outside, not to escape life, but to feel it more deeply. Let the wind remind you that change doesn't have to be forced. Let the stars remind you that your worries are not eternal. Let the trees remind you that stillness is strength and growth often happens in silence. Because when you connect with nature, you reconnect with yourself. So now we return to where we began, not in the noise of others' expectations, but in the quiet truth of your own becoming. This journey inward isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or instant results, but it's the most important work you'll ever do. Choosing to focus on yourself in silence is not about cutting the world off. It's about cutting through the noise so you can finally hear yourself. It's about becoming someone who doesn't have to chase validation because they've already found value within. Time and solitude teach you how to be your own sanctuary. Self-love helps you build a relationship with that sanctuary. Self-sufficiency gives you the freedom to protect it. Caring for yourself inside and out fortifies it. Financial clarity secures it. Dignity in your relationships honors it. Serenity deepens it. Quiet action grounds it. Saying no defends it. And nature reminds you that you've always belonged to something greater. The Stoics didn't live in a fantasy of eternal peace. They lived in the real world with its chaos, pressure, and pain, just like you. But they chose again and again to return to what they could control: their thoughts, their actions, their perspective. And in doing so, they found a different kind of strength. A strength that didn't demand attention. It simply endured calmly, consistently, powerfully. So maybe the invitation is this: don't run from silence. Walk into it. Don't fill every space with noise. Let some things remain unspoken. Let your life speak instead. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply being asked to pause and remember who you are beneath all the expectations. That voice inside you, the one that whispers, instead of shouts, it hasn't left. It's just been waiting for the noise to fade. And now that it has, what will you do next? If this episode gave you something to think about, feel, or change, consider subscribing, sharing it with someone who needs it, and most importantly, begin today quietly, intentionally for you. Conclusion: focusing on yourself in silence is not an escape from life. It's a return to it, a profound act of self-respect and remembrance. By embracing solitude, nurturing self-love, building self-sufficiency, and learning to cultivate inner peace, you don't cut yourself off from the world. You reconnect with it in a deeper, more meaningful way. In a world screaming for your attention, your greatest rebellion is to quietly reclaim your focus, your dignity, your serenity. The journey will not always be easy. It will be uncomfortable, lonely at times, and often misunderstood. But it will also be the most rewarding path you ever walk. Because at the end of it, you don't just find success, peace, or validation. You find yourself. Stay steady, stay silent, stay true, and watch how your life transforms from the inside out.